Welcome to College Football Roundtable, your source for college football coverage, including major storylines,
playoffs,
can't miss game previews, and picks each week. Join your hosts, Dan, Rob, and Jordan at the Roundtable for a show unlike anything else. As for Football presents the College Football Roundtable.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We like to call it Statement Saturday, but I'm going to call it Sleepwalking Saturday. The number of top 10 teams that got punched in the face and did not survive this past weekend was incredible. We're going to dive into it a little bit more and talk about it. It's Rivalry Week this week. We're week 13 of college football. What's up, Trash Talkers? Welcome back to the College Football Roundtable. Or if you prefer, you could still call it Ring Knocker Radio, but we like to call it Two O's and an NCO. I'm your host, Rob, out of Fayetteville. Got Dano, Ika Basin, Coastal Carolina, and 11-0 Trigger Joe from the home of the Big House. How's it going today, guys? And what games did you watch last weekend?
I was at the Army game, as you know, and it was freaking awesome. Came home Sunday morning, kind of going through the results. I see that UCF lost the freaking Squids. That's like a facepalm. And then the Vols dropped a game, 1,000 points at South Carolina, and Hendon Hooker tore his ACL. What a shame, man. It's fine. The Vols had a decent season, and I am okay that they're not going to make the playoff. This is not an issue, but Hendon Hooker tearing his ACL, that makes me want to just hang my head. That's horrible.
Yeah, I think Hendon Hooker going down is kind of indicative of the tail end of Tennessee's season. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's just that is the visible symbol of everything's going well, and then all of a sudden it's not. Yeah. Joe, how about you?
Yeah, I think that the true athletes out there, when you're watching a guy who plays like Hendon Hooker and he gets hurt, it really is sad. It's dude, that's not gonna come back the same. But one that no one's talking about, that if you're a Michigan fan, we got a big problem. Blake Corum hyperextended his knee last week and never came back in the game.
Oof.
And I saw him cutting on the sidelines, and it wasn't happening. As soon as he planted on the left to go right, he started limping, and he was done. So we got a problem there at Michigan. But, yeah, you hate to see an injury. I was watching Michigan, Illinois, and what an incredibly intense defensive battle that was. If you like offense, you would have thought it was boring, but I'd say Michigan better wake up and start hitting these deep passes, or they're in deep trouble this week because they missed on a lot. So it was a frustrating game to watch, but Michigan pulled it out in the end, and it was crazy to see 1, 2, 3, and 4 all get all they could handle and have to really battle out wins, because all 4 of the top 4 really got a game this week, and it was good for football. It was good to see.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that. So for me, I had the 3 TV set going this weekend, and I watched the Army game, of course, and then, dude, TCU. All right, look, for the fact that those guys find a way to win. If you watch that ending sequence of that game, all you need to watch is the last 45 seconds, right? So they throw it down, they get to, second or third down, and they're like, oh, hey, let's run the football to the middle of the field with no timeouts. And you're like, what are these guys doing? And literally, there was no time for their kicker to get into his head, because literally they had 5 seconds left by the time the kicking team got set on the field. And then he kicks a field goal with no time left. And you're like, all right, look, if you're not a TCU fan, then you're missing out on some great football. But however, as a playoff committee person, or a person that just likes exciting football contests, you can't keep these guys out of the playoff, regardless of how well, Bama or LSU or even Clemson does, just for the simple fact that these dudes win games. And I would love to see these guys take it down to the wire, because we know that their offense can score 50. So that gives them, the ability to keep pace with Ohio State. They can win in close games. So that gives them the ability to play with Michigan. There's not a team in this top 4 right now that TCU can't play with, and they find a way to win somehow. So you have to play some tremendous defense, or, take Duggan out of the ball game for those guys to not have its opportunity to win. So like I'm, singing the praises of TCU right now. And it was nice to see them, slip past Baylor for once, because usually Baylor is like their kryptonite towards the end of the season.
Yeah, that was, the only thing that separated the Michigan game from the TCU game was 13 seconds. Went the same way. Michigan just had 13 seconds on when they kicked their field goal, but they were about to go out with an L. And, TCU, I'm telling you, if I'm a defensive coordinator, that Duggan scares me. The kid's a gamer, and it's like that kid on the playground. Like, dude, he always wins. He's so lucky, but it's like they always, you know what I mean?
There's no luck there. That ain't luck. One time is luck. Do it, 11 times in a row, and it's something else.
Yeah,
they just won't go. You can't make them quit, and teams get tired, and these kids are human. And when these kids keep fighting, there's a mental battle out there, and Colonel Rob knows it the best on the defensive line, where when the guy across from you wants to quit. Yeah, you can feel it out there, and I think they make teams quit. Yeah,
and I legitimately think like TCU is the the easiest way to illustrate them. It's what Hoist Gracie used to say about fighting. Like, everybody can fight on dry land, but if I drag you into deep water, it's going to change the calculus. And that's what TCU is able to do. Like, they literally pay you until the last tick on the clock. And there's so many teams in college football that could learn that lesson of like, hey, the game's not over until it's over, but you also just keep playing because you never know when those breaks are going to happen. And TCU gets a lot of those breaks just because they just keep playing and they keep playing and they keep playing. But all that being said,
awesome.
Well, let's move on to the top 10. Dano, what do you got?
We still got Georgia at number 1. They remain perfect at 11-0. They got Georgia Tech this week. Unfortunately, that's not much of a rivalry anymore. Rob has written in here that anything can happen, but anything ain't going to happen this week. At number 2/3, we've got Ohio State and Michigan. One of these teams is going to make the playoff, and the other one's going to have a respectable season. What can you say? Number 4, TCU. Just talked about them quite a bit. They host Iowa State this weekend. Number 5, Southern California, 10-1. We'll see how they do against a very streaky Notre Dame team. I personally think they got an inside track on the playoff for once. I mean, I know everybody hates the Pac-12, but at a certain point, you got to take the winner of the Pac-12. Number 6, LSU at 9-2. I don't see how they get in. We'll see. Number 7, Clemson. Number 8, Bama. Number 9, Tennessee. Lost to South Carolina. Lost to Hendon Hooker, like we said. I think that's it. And number 10, the Oregon Ducks. I mean, somebody's got to be 10th, and it sure ain't going to be UCF, so what can you do? Rounding out the top 25 by conference, Pac-12 has 6 teams ranked 6. SEC has just 5. ACC has 3. The American has 3, Tulane, Cincy, and UCF. I don't know how the hell UCF is still in there after losing to Navy. Big 10 has 3. Big 12 has 3. Sun Belt has 1. That's Coastal Carolina. Not sure when they're going to get their quarterback back, but they sure as hell need him. And finally, you've got the independent Notre Dame ranked at 13. Top 25 losses this week. Number 6, Oregon. Number 11, Ole Miss. Number 12, UCLA. Number 16, NC State. Number 17, Tulane. Number 18, Texas. Number 20, UCF. Number 21, Illinois. Number 24, Kentucky. That was a lot.
Yeah. I mean, and again, they called this statement Saturday, but like I said, I think it was sleepwalking. I mean, it's rare that you see this many ranked teams and unranked opponents chip off folks like that. And it's pretty rough. I mean, like Oregon, who saw that one coming? Ole Miss, who saw that one coming? UCLA and USC, that was for the best team in the Pac-12, basically. But Tulane and Texas, what is going on? And then, of course, the Navy game, and that was crazy. But what do you guys think? Who do you think is the most overrated team in the top 10? Are there any overrated teams in the top 10, or do you think it's about right?
I don't really believe in Oregon.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to agree with that. I mean, it's not like they're a bad team, but they're 9-2, and I think everybody agrees that the Pac-12 is the weakest of the Power 5 conferences. So, how they're in there. I mean, that's North Carolina still only has 1 loss, correct?
Yeah,
I probably would have put them at 10.
Against Oregon right now on a neutral field. Notre Dame wins, and they're 13th. So I could flip flop those teams and be just fine with it.
Yeah,
but I mean, not too much. Honestly, after the top 4, I kind of lose a little bit of focus. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like I know somebody's gonna sneak in there, but man, I honestly think USC has the best shot to win out and get in because they're about to play Notre Dame. That's gonna be one hell of a football game.
Yeah,
both teams are hot.
Yeah, I think that's going to be one of the X factors of this weekend is deciding, who's going to represent the Pac-12. I mean, USC is solidly good, and if you're an Oklahoma fan, you don't like how all that stuff went down, to USC, to be honest, because you lose your coach and your starting quarterback to a team that's way out of your conference that still has impacts because, like, obviously Oklahoma is nowhere near the team that they were, last year. With the same
I'm
talent.
not a fan of that coaches leaving and taking like what Norville did to Nevada when he left for Colorado State. I thought that was total BS, man.
Yeah,
he took the whole staff with him, and it's like, well, what's Nevada supposed to do?
I mean, that was addition by subtraction.
Horrible.
Nevada's a good bit better than Colorado State this year.
It's funny, isn't that karma?
Yeah, it is.
Colorado State failed. It's not. You can't just interchange cultures. That's what Michigan did with Rich Rod. It doesn't work.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said about like the coaching dynamics.
That was kind of a closed-minded statement. I'm sorry, Colonel Rod. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I meant like overnight you can't do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I apologize.
No, you're fine. And I think it merits the discussion. And I think that's one of the things that that's one of the negatives of the transfer portal that we're starting to see. Right? Is like these coaches leave and they take these players with them and. Like, imagine the amount of recruiting that was put in. And I get it. Lincoln Riley probably recruited Caleb Williams and all that stuff. I got that. But at some point, like, you're taking the most talented player on the team because he was their team last year. And clearly he's the team for USC this year. And, changing an offensive scheme to a pro set or whatever that they're running over there in USC, like, it helped. But it also leaves this big gaping hole. And Oklahoma's record shows it, and that's a bottom line. Oklahoma's record shows it. Moving on to Service Academy football. We mentioned this earlier, and as much as I hate to say it, man, Navy showed up. They took the momentum that they had from the North Carolina, the Notre Dame game, and walked it right into Central Florida and smacked around UCF, man. Like, I could not believe it. And I'm watching this. It's like there's no way that these guys they're gonna edge them. And then it was like the game stayed close. And as long as the game is close, and again, it goes back to that strong belief in yourself and wanting to finish the game. And if you're Navy, if you're close with a ranked team, you could probably beat them. And they've done it before in the past with Notre Dame and other teams that were much better quality programs than UCF. So it's easily could happen to UCF. And the graphic that I saw was this is only the second time that Navy has gone into a ranked opponent's home stadium and won. So in the history of the program. So imagine that. Like, yeah, that's a pretty deep and crazy statistic.
It was unbelievable to see Navy close that gap with just heart. And that's what I love about the service academies. The last time I went to a Michigan game, for the military thing was when they played Army, and that's how the service academy bridges the gap in recruiting budget and talent and everything else. You can't make them quit, dude. It's just heart. They play with a different intensity, and that's what I told my buddy who's a Notre Dame fan. I said Navy will play like they're playing for their life, and Notre Dame might sleep on them a little bit. So watch out. It could be close, and sure enough, they did. But dude, Navy should be proud of themselves. That was a hell of a football game they played.
I got to say, it's crazy to me how much Navy suddenly looks like Army did a couple of years ago, and Army kind of looks like Navy did a couple of years ago. And I'm not making a qualitative judgment. I'm just saying, like, it's all their guards. We talked about this a little bit on the other show, but it's just they're getting physical push up the middle. They got that fullback going. Once Dabo, I think Fofana, I think that's his name. Yeah, once that kid's get going, you are screwed. He's such a good player. I mean, I don't know that he's quite at the Brad Roberts level, but it's. Yeah, man, it's all those midline plays suddenly for the mids. Pretty amazing that they just out-physical UCF at the point of attack.
Yeah, and the fact that a gutsy quarterback play with Ty Lavatai. The kid's hurt. Like, he's injured, and he's bringing it every week. And it's like, look, I'm Army through and through to the bone. However, give credit where credit is due. Like, Navy is playing some good football. And Dan, I know you got some comments about their defense, but the offense is stepping up. Like, whereas they were only scoring 3 points or getting field goals, they're actually getting touchdowns now, and that's been the difference in some of these wins.
Well, they're very, very good against the run. They have been all season. Their only vulnerability is down the field, like over the top, and teams have been burning them all year. So if you can pick up that Navy blitz, like you can make some money there. But Notre Dame couldn't do it, and UCF couldn't do it. So apparently it's harder than it looks.
Yeah, no, Dano, they made believers out of me. And I was a naysayer before the Notre Dame game. And yeah, I won't say anything about Navy in a game that's a 1-2 score game, just because of that simple fact. They can stop the run. And they would give a team like Michigan problems because Michigan hasn't been hitting the deep ball. And yeah, when they take the run away from a lot of teams, it's like they do not know what to do. And some teams can beat them over the top, but Navy's for real. You know, it's who's surging in college football, and I think that I wouldn't think anybody would want to play them right now because it's a lose-lose situation.
Yeah, I think really what it boils down to is it's kind of like we always talk about it in the game. It's the halftime adjustments, but for the season, it's that mid-season adjustment. So after week 8, it's like, what are the coaches doing differently that they didn't do the first 8 weeks? You know, and maybe it's like if you're one of these top teams, maybe it's a new wrinkle. You know, maybe it's figuring out how to play with an injury or a key player that's out. But for the service academies in particular, it's like, hey, how do we make adjustments after the first half of the season? Do we add new plays? Do we put in new wrinkles? Do we do other things? And Navy's been able to do it. And again, both Navy and Air Force, and I say this all the time, I think Navy and Air Force are disadvantaged because they are in a conference. And so because they're in a conference, you know every year where those guys are going to fall into your schedule, and you can prep for them as you're moving towards that game. Whereas like, hey, look, Army's completely independent. Oh crap, we got them on the schedule this year. You know, so then I have to practice differently to get ready for those guys. Hopefully I'll have a bye week in front of me to prepare for that running style of offense.
Yeah, you got to blow the dust off old playbook that you never used because Army's offense is coming in. They gave Michigan all kinds of problems when they played them. But, yeah, big ups to Ty Lavatine, man. That's the story you can tell his grandkids. Like, yeah, I was hurt. I went out there anyways. We won. No big deal. Yeah. That's all part of him. No biggie.
Yeah, and I will tell you, senior night's been good for the other two academies. So Air Force is 8-3, won 24-12 in senior night. I think this was the last home game before they go to remodel the stadium. So these guys are going to be playing in Mile High Stadium next year, which is kind of cool. So it'll increase capacity. But in the house that John Elway built, they may be able to bring in some more people. And like I said, I think Air Force is. Honestly, when I think about the service academies, and this is just my spin, and like you guys can agree, disagree, send something nasty in the comments. I don't personally care, but I legitimately think like Air Force is the flashier team because they're younger as an academy, you know. And what I would tell you is like if you really want to know the difference between Army, Navy, and Air Force is look at their heroes, right? Army has legit heroes across many 200 years of service. Air Force, when you grow up and hit 100 years old, then you may have some heroes that are worth meriting. But like a lot of the folks that the Air Force talks about are fighter jets and fighter pilots, but they don't talk about like the other half, you know, like the special operations dudes or the guys that are on the ground doing other things outside of flying the pointy nose jet. So I think that's like, for me, that's kind of the difference between those teams. I think Army and Navy at least are like the blue collar guys. Like they come into work every day with their lunch pail and do some work. Whereas like the Air Force guys work at an IT startup and they're trying to make their next $100 billion.
They got better child.
All right. I have to dissent. We are praising the academy that just put out the NASA uniforms for 0.01% of their graduates. I mean, I understand it's more astronauts or whatever, but dude, they maybe get one dude or one lady every 3 classes to go into NASA, and that's who we're celebrating. And this is the blue collar team. Come on,
what are we doing here?
Well, hey, you know what? True statement. I will say that like I'm talking about day to day. Like the uniform selection, that's a completely different thing. Like I think I always thought Navy's alternate uniforms suck, you know. And again, it goes back to like at least Air Force and Army, and I think it's just a thing. I think it's just a deal with
that's
Navy
a Nike thing, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the Nike thing that they have is like they really explore, you know, the history of whatever organization that they're representing. Whereas Navy is like, hey, what will look good on a poster, you know? And if that works for your folks, that works for your folks. But the bottom line is, I legitimately think that from an academy perspective, at least from a working angle, Navy is a little bit more of Navy's closer to Army than Air Force is, and I'll put a pin in that piece of the discussion right there. So Army went 1-0 this past week. They're a solid team at UConn, right? So they put together one of their best performances of the season, 34-17 on senior night at Mikey Stadium. We deep dived that pretty thoroughly in the Army football show. We actually had Jim Zappellis on. He's one of our go-to former Army players to jump on, and so he had some really good commentary about it. But bottom line is, I think Navy and Army are on a collision course. It's probably not as glamorous as it has been in previous years, but this is more like a mid-2000s Army-Navy contest when both of the teams are kind of, right there on the verge of having great seasons. And for Army, like, they literally had the ability to kind of pull it out and have a, go 500, go to a bowl game. Like, if they win their next two games, God forbid, like, we're dogging them out because they're not winning, but they still have a chance for the postseason in some capacity, and
very slim.
Yeah,
it's strictly mathematically speaking.
Yes, but mathematically speaking, they do have a chance. Anyway, I think we actually talked about this, and so I had a note in the outline to talk more about the service academies, but I think we covered them pretty well this time. And hey, I'm going to say it openly: a shout out to all the Navy fans that are listening to the College Football Roundtable. We don't want to beat you up too bad because we want you to stay. However, your uniforms look like backsplash in somebody's fancy kitchen. So.
And that's the nicest 3 minutes you'll ever get about Navy. All right.
Yeah. I mean, and of course, like if we're out in the bar, we'll buy you a drink. But if you wake up in a strange place in a bathtub full of ice, it wasn't the drink that I gave you. All right, so we're gonna move on to Joe's Blue Falcon of the Week. Joe. I mean, we sent the teaser out on the social, so if you're following us, you kind of know who it is. But what do you got this week?
Sometimes handing this thing out it's kind of like a father to son talk I want to have. Like, it's Drake May, okay? I get it. He's a freshman. My first action as an underclassman was in the playoffs, returning a kick. I was the deep man and broke my first tackle, and I was gone. And then I heard the dreaded word that no ball carrier wants to hear. Ball. I had fumbled. The other team recovered. We lost. I was the asshole. Excuse my language. So I understand having a game against Georgia Tech where you throw for half what you threw for the week before, 0 TDs and 1 interception. I get it. But when you go 450 against Wake with 3 TDs, 300 against Virginia, 390 against Pitt, 380 against Duke, and 0 interceptions in all of those games, and then you come out and do this against Georgia Tech when you guys had a backdoor chance at the playoffs, I hate to say it, kid, you've had a great season, but this week you are the Blue Falcon.
Yeah.
All right.
So Blue Falcon of the Week, like, I absolutely agree with you.
You want to be the quarterback sometimes, you got to do it.
Yeah. So Drake May absolutely did not show up, and we were texting back and forth, but he's also suffering from like Nick Cage disease, right? He's suffering the incredible weight of massive talent, and so the sports writers have screwed that kid too, right? So they've been writing how great he is, talking about his production, like, oh, he's got the same numbers as C.J. Stroud, and there's a lot of praise being heaped on this young man, which is great because he's playing well, but then to collapse like that, and it wasn't just him, it was a team collapse, so he throws an interception, he gets sacked 6 times, and you blow a 17-point lead and lose to a team that has no business legitimately being on the field with you.
True.
Like, it's like, hey guys, tune in this weekend and watch what Georgia does to Georgia Tech, and that's probably what UNC should have done. But again, both of those teams got caught slipping. UNC and North Carolina State got caught slipping, looking ahead to this matchup for this week for the in-state rivalry rather than focusing on their opponent, and it bit them.
And having said that, because I almost feel bad, and please bleep out my cuss because I try to keep it professional, but that's the price of being a rock star, kid. Sorry, sometimes all those benefits of being the starting quarterback at a 9-1 UNC team and getting treated like a god on campus, they come with a price. And I think you got caught sleeping, like Colonel Rob said. So yeah, it comes with a price of being treated like a god because you're the starting quarterback at a major football team. So it is a price of that comes along with being that famous. So unfortunately, he had to learn it before he could legally buy a beer. But it's also a blessing that he's in that position at that age. So
Yeah, very, very, very true. So let's move on to the games of the week. Guys, you missed it last night. There's Big Mac action if you didn't watch it. So you had Ball State and Miami. Like everybody wants to play Ball State all of a sudden. Don't know why, but definitely a lot of people are trying to get them on the schedule. Bowling Green at Ohio. Again, both of those games came on last night. So we're just going to move on to Turkey Day matchups. Hey, Thanksgiving. There's more pro football on Thursday, of course, because there's always that. For those of you guys that are old enough to remember Leon Lett dropping the touchdown in that game many moons ago. But you've got the battle for Mississippi. So you got Mississippi State and Ole Miss is number 14. They're kicking at 7 on ESPN. I think that's going to be a good contest. Both of those teams are kind of in the same boat. This is like, at least if you win your rivalry, you kind of salvage your season. And so I think these guys are both in that same position. Moving on to Friday, again, you've got Baylor and Texas. Again, that was a much more exciting contest at the first half of the season when both of those teams were doing pretty well. But those guys always play each other tough. Like if you have two teams in the same state or even close to the same state that are playing, it goes way deeper than just what's on TV. You're talking about recruiting, you're talking about bragging rights. You've got brothers that probably played for opposite teams. It literally is Civil War all over again. All right, so you got Tulane and Cincinnati. I think that's probably one of the best matchups in American Conference. I'd love to see, those guys play. I think the shine came off the apple on Tennessee, but Cincinnati. But Tulane is having a great season this season, and this is probably going to be the pinnacle of American Conference football play. Saturday.
Mike Pratt is such a good quarterback. We saw him a couple of years ago when Army went down there, and I think he was a freshman. And now it's like he's an experienced quarterback, and you're really seeing him play. He's so good, underrated.
Yep.
Yeah, he's a grown man. And you've got Arizona and Arizona State. That one's I used to care, but I don't.
Meh.
Now you've got NC State, North Carolina. Would have been a much more exciting matchup had both of those teams won, but they were sleepwalking this past week, and both of them got caught, which is a shame because I think North Carolina had a legitimate argument. So, like, if North Carolina, as 10-1, beats Clemson in the ACC championship, that states your case for the playoff. It really does. Hey, we beat a former national champion. We're a conference champion. Give us our opportunity. And I don't think it's going to happen now because of that. You got the Battle of California. So you got UCLA and Cal at 4:30 on Fox. I think that'll be a good game. Again, UCLA is the much better team, but again, it's a rivalry. So California will probably pay them tough for a half, maybe 3/4, but I think UCLA's talent will just overcome them in the end. Florida and Florida State. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Like that used to be one of the premier games of Thanksgiving weekend for about 20, 25 years. And like I can legitimately remember programming in the CBS radio station on a PRC 126 in Ranger School and listening to Florida State in the patrol base. And I did not get caught and didn't get a major minus for it, but it's definitely one of those things that like you could legitimately listen to FM versions of football games. We listened to that in the patrol base and because that game used to be so exciting, right? Like that was just one of those games.
The shine coming off the apple. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that used to be when Bowden was there and Herb the Weasel was coaching. I'm sorry, that's what I call Urban Meyer, but that was one hell of a rivalry.
Yeah, I mean that was one of those games that like if you were a college football fan, you stopped what you were doing. You checked in on that game at the minimum, but most people watched it because it was such a big part of college football. Yeah. And this is just and like Florida State basically is your capper for primetime games on Thursday night, and then you've got Wyoming and Fresno State at 10 o'clock on FS1. They did say something over this past weekend that made me chuckle, so they start calling it the Pac-10 or Pac-12 After Dark, which is what they're calling all those late games on Saturday night, which was like, okay. I can respect that. I'll give you a little hat nod for that one because that was a pretty good way of articulating it. Hey, so starting on Saturday, noon kicks. Like this is going to be a wild one. So if you have the ability to stream multiple channels, you probably need to do so because this is going to be all over the place on Saturday. One of the first kicks is West Virginia and Oklahoma State. Like, who cares? Except for some people in the Big 12. That's not the biggest game out there, but it's definitely a good one. You got Coastal and James Madison on ESPNU.
Grayson McCall back yet? Do we know?
I'm not sure.
I don't think he is because James Madison is given like 5 points, and I can't imagine if McCall was in there that JMU would be favored. But no,
agreed.
Yeah, that's probably a fair assessment. You got ODU and South Alabama. Yeah, ODU and South Alabama. That's going to be a good game, man. Old Dominion is good. South Alabama is good. Like if you're a Sun Belt fan, and then if you're not a Sun Belt fan, you know this is a tough one to decide which one you're going to put on the TV though, because like when we get to these next 3 featured games that are coming up, there's no way that like I'm going to be watching anything else. So you got Michigan and Ohio State on Fox at noon. You've got Army and UMass on ESPN Plus. So go ahead and get that subscription or warm up that Disney Plus bundle package. You probably get a better discount if you get Hulu, ESPN Plus, and Disney Plus. And it's just in time for Christmas, so you might as well jump on.
You guys play on what? You play on Disney? Sounds intimidating.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's pretty much it because it's like Mickey Mouse football sometimes. But you got Georgia Tech. Yeah, you got Georgia Tech and Georgia. I mean, that one's mildly interesting, but I will be checking in on that one. I won't watch it, but South Carolina at Clemson, based off
that's a game.
Based off of what they did last week to Tennessee, like you got to watch that game. I think that one's one that will be on my television for sure. Early afternoon kicks, nothing really interesting there unless you're a North Texas or Troy fan. I think Troy and Arkansas State might be a decent game, be a halfway decent contest, but it's not, to the elevation of me wanting to change the channel just yet. Then you've got the Iron Bowl. This one's going to be interesting because the Iron Bowl, it's been, we're 9 years or 10 years since the Kick Six. And Bama is kind of in that same position as they were going into this game. The only difference is at Bryant-Denny Stadium. So that helps Bama significantly because it's a home game. Because I don't know if you've ever seen a game at Jordan-Hare Stadium. It's not Jordan-Hare. It's Jordan-Hare. That's how they say it down there, country people. But at Jordan-Hare Stadium, it gets pretty wild down there. And like a football game in Auburn is bonkers. And like
they're
if
crazy.
You've never seen, and like Toombs Corner and all that other stuff down there, like that is some good college football tradition. So if you ever get a chance to go see a game at Auburn, go watch it, particularly an Iron Bowl. I don't know. I think the tickets are like $2,000 for like nosebleed seats. But I think this is going to be a better contest than advertised just because I think the line's like plus 22 for
22 and a half.
Yeah. I don't think that's going to hold up, to be honest. I think Auburn has the team. Plus you got Cadillac Williams coaching, so he doesn't have to hype the team up. Like he can talk from his experience playing in the Iron Bowl in college. And it's not a coaching thing. It's just relating to your players. Like, hey, look, this is how this game is going to feel. So I think it's going to be a much better contest. Hey, I put this one on here just because the spoiler makers in Indiana are playing. And so like Purdue has a chance, believe it or not, to win the West.
Wow.
The most lopsided conference
in
the world.
Yeah, like they legitimately, because there's like a 3-way tie last weekend, and I didn't check to see all the fallout of the games, but if Purdue wins out, they legitimately can be in, the Big Ten championship, which is interesting, but it's also even more interesting depending upon the results of the game this weekend, because if you look at the one team that can ruin somebody's season in the Big Ten, again, I will put my spoiler makers jersey on and I will give them the nod because Purdue will sneak up on you and get you. Like they have done it on more than one occasion.
Yeah, I was driving by the location where the Big Ten championship is going to be played last night at about 8:00 when I went through Columbus, because that's the Big Ten championship. It's being played on Saturday. That's how I feel, because either one of those teams will crush Purdue. It won't be fun for Purdue.
Yeah, I think that's going to be interesting. Like I think with conference realignment, they probably need to make some adjustments within the Big Ten just to balance it out, particularly with the two new teams coming in.
And UCLA need to go there.
Yeah, with those guys coming in. they've got to do something. They've got to do something to shore up that part of the conference because again, like that, like, hey, if I'm watching Penn State, Ohio State, or Michigan, like those games are going to be good, whoever they're playing. But then when I get to the other side, it's like, well, Purdue. It's kind of how most people feel.
Not much opposition.
Yeah, so it makes it more interesting. But moving on, we'll go to the 4:00 games, and the biggest kick at 4:00 is going to be Iowa State and TCU. Not for the fact of anything that Iowa State is doing; it's just to see if TCU can finish up their season and move on to the Big 12 championship legitimately. You got Michigan State at Penn State. I think this one's going to be a beatdown. The way that Penn State's been playing the last few weeks, Michigan State's going to take another L in a very, very bad way.
And old Mel Tucker won't go to a bowl game. Oh,
yeah.
Bumskis.
Yeah. But I don't think anybody really likes those guys anyway. You've got UCF and USF, the battle for Florida. I don't know how well that's going to go. You got LSU and Texas A&M. Again, A&M is bad this season. I mean, let's just be real. Like, you spent all that money to lose, and it's bad enough that Bama is 9-2, but if you look at Texas A&M's record, it just goes to show you that name, image, and likeness does not equal parity. And so that is a big thing. And everybody was complaining about, all the moves that A&M was making in the offseason. They're about to get beat down by LSU. Like, LSU is going to take those kids out to the woodshed, and the A&M is probably going to get dropped, and they're just going to be T. They're just going to beat the crap out of it. It's going to be bad.
Beat the letters off you.
Yeah, so you're going to have Syracuse and Boston College. That's probably going to be a better game than advertised because BC is playing pretty decent, but they're nicked up. They got smacked hard by Notre Dame last week. And then you got Notre Dame and USC. That's your 7:30 game, which will be awesome. That's prime time on ABC. You got Tennessee and Vanderbilt.
That's not a game.
No, I mean
that's not a game. Unless you're a Tennessee fan, nobody's watching that game. Come on.
Yeah, but it'll be interesting to check in to see how the offense runs without Hendon Hooker. I mean, that's really the honest. That's a viewpoint for that one. You got Oklahoma and Texas Tech again. That was like interesting 5 years ago. Then you've got Kansas and Kansas State in the Sunflower Showdown, and I am specifically highlighting that game because one of the guys that I have bumped into several times works, and he has a tie to West Point too, which is kind of cool because they have some of their product on the campus and they do virtual training suites. And so Jeff from Overmatch, if you're listening, I just wanted to give you a quick shout out because he actually listens to the show. He found us on social media and then has been listening. So I appreciate him being part of our audience. You got Pitt, Miami, Arizona and San Diego, or Air Force and San Diego State. Oregon State, again, that matchup is mildly interesting just for the result to see what happens with Oregon, to see if they can keep it together. You got UW and Washington State. Nobody cares about that one except for the people in Washington. No. And Utah and Colorado. Unfortunately, the Buffaloes are going to take another beat down. Like, Colorado is playing about as bad as they were after they got the sanctions in the 90s, and they got to figure out a way to turn that program around because they have had one really decent season, and that was 2016, that they kind of held it together at the beginning of the season, and then it all fell apart. Mm-hmm. But that is a lot of games covered this weekend. I'm going to catch my breath real quick. Dan, we'll pass it over to you, and let's pick some games.
Weekly locks.
Yeah, man. I went 1-2 last week. I took Army and UConn to go under, and that game went way over. I took UTSA and Rice to go over, and they went way under. Roadrunners did their part, but Rice only scored 7. And Syracuse lost but covered the spread when it was 10.5. Unfortunately, by the time I put my pick in for the cruiserweight belt, it had dropped to 10. So I took the push there. Anyway, on we go. If you're curious, I am 500 on the season right now. So I took Tulane plus 2.5 at Cincy. As we said, I think Tulane might have the better team. Definitely think they got the better quarterback. I took Troy at Arkansas State to go under 47. 47 is not really a lot of points, but Troy's all defense and Arkansas State is terrible. And finally, Iowa State at TCU over 47.5. Again, I understand Iowa State's mostly a defensive team, but 47.5 is not really a lot of points.
That's fair. Joe, how about you?
Oh, man, I went 2-2 last week. Michigan under hit, and then TCU won but didn't cover. UCF made me look stupid, and Tulane smash. That was an absolute beatdown they put on SMU. So I'm riding the green wave, man. I'm taking them +2 at Cincinnati. I really do think I think Cincinnati's kind of. I don't really think they believe they can win this game, if that makes sense. I think Tulane is just very confident. They're playing really good football. They smashed SMU, and if you like football math, SMU gave Cincinnati a really good game. So, football math doesn't always work out, but I'm just saying, I think Tulane's the hotter team, and they're getting 2 points. Give it to me. I like it. And then I like K-State -11.5. I like them to destroy Kansas. They're really hot right now. They just beat a much better West Virginia team on the road by 17. So I like them to win that game by 2 scores. And I like Ole Miss to kind of put a cherry on top of a decent season and take care of Mississippi State at home -2. I'll take -2. I like them to win by a field goal. And I want to go. Yeah, I think I'm going to do it. But I'm going to take USC -5.5 against Notre Dame. I think they win by a touchdown.
Wow.
Yeah, I think they win by a touchdown against Notre Dame in a very good game. So it could be that could be one of my L's for next week, but I just got a feeling. And I'm +9 for the season, so pretty good season. If I didn't really enter for the cruiserweight belt because I didn't get in on time, so I didn't think it was fair when I went on that serious run to be like, hey boys, I'm here and I'm +10. Who's this guy? So I just been counting to myself, and next season we'll get in and I'll get in the fray with you guys. But yeah, I'm +9 on my picks, so feeling pretty good about those, and that's what I got. So I got USC -5.5 against Notre Dame, Kansas State at -11.5 at home, Tulane +2 on the road to Cincinnati, and Ole Miss -2 against Mississippi State at home. Louisville is getting 3 points also, and Louisville's playing really good football right now. I think they bumped into the top 25 on ESPN, and I'm not going to call it a pick, but I think that's a strong one if people like it, and I'll give you another one that I just feel, but I'm not betting because my heart's in this game. I think Michigan, Ohio State actually goes under 56. I think it's going to be much more defense. I think this game won't really open up until the second half.
Yeah, and, I think that's fair. Yeah, if there's a first half parlay on that one, on an over under, I would probably look at that one too, because I think the under is going to be pretty low. I think it'll be like 17-14 or something at halftime, and then whoever's going to break away will break away after half. I think that's a pretty fair assessment, and it's a bold pick with USC and at 5.5 against Notre Dame. However, Notre Dame has struggled in those big showcase matchups, right? And I mean that's just been the way that it is. Like, yeah, you beat down Boston College, you barely escaped Navy. Now you're playing against USC, which is hands down, even from the eye test and statistically, they are the best team in the Pac-12. And so I think that's pretty reasonable, and I think they're gonna take Notre Dame for a ride. Could be wrong. I went 2-1 last week, and again, I think UCF made fools of a lot of people. I'm +6 in the cruiserweight championship, so I am above the line, but barely. but then when I look at the rest of the crowd, we're kind of busting the curve because there's some guys that probably need to either don't bet on the color of the jersey, or if your wife thinks their color is cool, because that's not a way to win.
I came from -6 to be at +2 on the cruiserweight belt. I just got to go 8-0, and I'll take that. I'll keep that thing in the trophy case.
Yeah, so you got to win it. You may want to start scraping some of Joe's picks. Y'all need to start picking.
My little girl picked a 16 parlay based on the mascots one time.
Nice.
Thank God she thought horned frogs were cool.
Yeah. Fair point.
Take that, Vegas. No.
Yeah. No, I went 2-1 last week. Of course, UCF didn't cover against Navy, and it pisses me off. So, Navy pulls off a great win against UCF, and then they create a great loss by picking NASA as their Army Navy uniforms. I hit on OSU and Maryland over 65. I knew that was coming. That's just the trend for that game. Those guys put up a lot of points. I think it was 77 was the final total for that one. And then I had Louisville to cover -4. They actually won big. I think that was purely a trap game for NC State. They were looking ahead like, hey, we're gonna bump off UNC and mess up their opportunity at the ACC championship, or mess up their season or post the opportunity, and they got caught. And both
Georgia Tech said, "Don't worry, boys, we'll do it for
you." We got your back, and so they took care of them. But this week, my picks are UNC and NC State to go under 56. I think Drake May is not going to be as good as he was last week. I think it's going to be in his head a little bit. You took a loss, and I would be surprised if he plays the whole game just because they know that they've got Clemson the following week. So it makes it kind of tough to really get ready for this game, because what does the rest of your season look like? Because you've got a conference championship, and then in order for you to have a remote chance to get into the playoff, is you've got to run the table. So you've got to win and keep people healthy. So I think if UNC gets up early on NC State, they'll probably pull their starters just to keep them healthy and fresh. If they score, and the other piece of it is like NC State hasn't scored 20 points in like the last 3 weeks, and they got smashed by Louisville. So looking at the way that they're playing, I think, Drake May, UNC will probably score 35, but NC State won't bring the rest of it. So I think Drake May will probably throw 2 to 3 touchdowns this game if he's lucky, but I think he'll get pulled probably midway through the second half, if not earlier than that. I would say take South Carolina to cover 14.5 against Clemson. Clemson is good.
Oh yeah,
they've been playing decent ball.
Yeah,
but freaking Spencer Rattler, man! Like, if you did not watch that Tennessee game, go back and watch the highlights.
That was fire. It was on fire.
Still a 5-star. Guys, still a 5-star, fellas.
That dude looked every bit of the quarterback that he was recruited to be, right?
Exactly.
And like, that's the thing, like that, like I have yet to see a performance out of somebody like that in the transfer portal. Probably the closest dude to that was Baker Mayfield, after he transfers and just shows up and like blows everybody away. I think that is like that, to put it in contemporary lexicon, that was like Baker Mayfield-esque performance, like Texas Tech, Oklahoma type. I think that's legit. I think if it comes down to quarterbacks battling out, USC actually has a better quarterback. I think Spencer Rattler is much, much better than Clemson's QB. So if the defenses are playing tight, I think USC has a better chance of winning this game, just because playmakers calling signals for the team.
Yeah.
Again, I kind of noted this one a little bit earlier. Auburn to cover 22 at the Iron Bowl. It's the Iron Bowl, guys. Like, who gives Bama that many points in the damn Iron Bowl? It doesn't make any sense. It's like Vegas is teasing that one. I'm taking it because I know that Auburn is going to cover that spread. The way that Bama has been playing this season, they've been struggling against teams that they're supposed to beat, and it's your in-state rivalry. And again, this goes way, way deeper than just a football game. And I'm definitely going to be like checking out social media to watch the freaking craziness at Toombs Corner and all that other stuff after Auburn upsets Alabama in the Iron Bowl. I think it's a bold choice, and that's a deep cut, but I think they will, because they're due. I mean, like, Bama's
oh man, you're out of your mind. You are out. There's no way. They might cover 22, but they're not going to win that game.
Look, Bama has not looked good since they lost to Tennessee. They edged Ole Miss, and let's face it, like, Austin Peay is not the team that you want to play against, right? We know that. I just think Auburn has a secret, and Bama's about to find out.
All right.
That's kind of my thought on it. But as you guys hear, my dog's having rivalries with the neighbors. Let's talk about what other rivalries we enjoy watching other than the usual ones. I think all of us kind of sit in there on the college football spectrum. And if you're a true college football fan, there's more than one rivalry game that you like to watch. We'll pass it over.
I got one.
Yeah, I got two that you probably don't watch a lot. And the first is the war on I-4, USF and UCF. When that thing is good, man, it's awesome. And, South Florida, has been a while since they've been good, but they tend to give Central Florida a game. They might give them a game this week too. I don't know what the psychology is going to be for the Knights coming off the loss at home to Navy. And my other one is the Ram Falcon Trophy game, Air Force versus Colorado State. They usually play that game on Thanksgiving. Freaking Zoomy grads didn't like that, so they moved it to last weekend, which sucks because, the NFL games on Thanksgiving always suck. Like, inevitably one team is up 35-7. And so I almost always watch that Ram Falcon Trophy game while I'm cooking my turkey outside, and it's just, it's a bummer that it's not on there this year. And
Air Force wants to eat their turkey, the fatties.
And then my two obvious ones: Georgia Tech back when that was a game, and the Iron Bowl. How can you not love the Iron Bowl? That's a great game.
Yeah, truly classic. Joe, how about you?
Oh, I got a great one. Living in Charlotte. It's you're right there by South Carolina, and I can tell you South Carolina and Clemson is a serious rivalry game for the locals. Man, I'm dead. I've seen bar fights almost start over those two teams. So that's going to be solid to see South Carolina playing hot against Clemson. I think that's going to be a slobber knocker, and I know SC fans want this one bad. They love to give it to Clemson fans because Clemson's been able to talk trash for the last 10 years. So I'm going to definitely be checking that one out. I like your pick on it. And then, we talk about the shine coming off the apple. How about the shine coming back on the Notre Dame USC rivalry? Those two teams hate each other.
That's a good
They call them Notre Shame. That's what USC calls them. They said the two teams you don't want to lose to are UCL Fake and Notre Shame. And that came from who played with Reggie Bush, the other running back, went to the NFL.
Oh, Lindale White.
Yep, Lindale White said that on the documentary about the Texas USC game, which was one of the greatest college football games of all time. But he said the two teams you don't want to lose to are Notre Dame and UCL Fake. But so it's going to be great to see that rivalry renewed with two, in my mind, top 10 football teams. I know Notre Dame's 13th, but they're hot right now. And then, oh my goodness. I know you said don't pick the ones that are the obvious ones, but man, I bleed maize and blue. And Colonel Rob, I love you 364 days a year, but on Saturday for 3 hours, you are my sworn enemy. I know you're going to be pulling for the Buckeyes. I say it to one of my best friends every year because he's a Buckeye fan. But so many implications.
Yeah.
Catch an L and your season's over. You get a good bowl game.
Yeah.
Win and you could possibly play 4 more. It's so much riding on it. And I'm not going to say who I like. I'm not going to put negative vibes out there, but I'm praying that Michigan can figure out their problems on offense. Because if not, Ohio State can turn it to a track meet. There's an NFL starting offense coming up against them. So going to be a tough task for the Wolverines right now. We're dinged up also very badly on offense, and we might have just lost Blake Corum. So if we lost him, his backup's out for the season. So we'll be starting a true freshman at running back that nobody knows about. So Michigan could be in a lot of trouble. Yeah. So keep your eyes on that one, boys, on the injury report, because I know Buckeye fans will take minus 7.5 if Michigan can't start their only Heisman hopeful. So I'm pulling for my boys, but they're up against it this week. It's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, I kind of view that game very, very much like the USC and Clemson game, right? So if it comes down to quarterback on quarterback, like everybody else is executing evenly, you've got C.J. Stroud versus J.J. McCarthy.
Not even close. Not even close.
And so when you look at it from that perspective, that's the game, but within the game, right? Which quarterback is
0 for 6 on any pass over 15 yards last week. He missed 3 touchdowns, and we barely beat Illinois. This kid hasn't hit a deep ball in a month, and I've watched him aggressively. Yeah. Every time he throws downfield, it goes high or long. He's rattled. He's a true freshman, or I think he's a redshirt freshman, and he is rattled, and it shows. And I'm praying for him this week because he's about to go up against a nasty defense.
Well, and I mean, look at it this way: on his best day, J.J. McCarthy has a third of the starts that C.J. Stroud does, and so that's the math on it. And so from an experience perspective, advantage Ohio State. Defensively, I think it's a push. I think both of their defenses are about the same, and then it is what it is. I think the game is going to be pretty exciting. Hopefully it doesn't go into overtime because I don't want to have to like be bouncing back and forth from too many games. I want them to go and be final, so I don't have so I'm not crying in my mashed potatoes on a Saturday afternoon. So for me, of course, we already talked about the Iron Bowl. I think there's something about that. The kick six is like college football history. So if you don't know that, YouTube it. It's on the YouTubes now, so you can watch that one. But I think that was one of the single most impressive special teams play probably in the history of football, let alone in college football. So that one's a great rivalry. I think it's a little bit better when they play in Auburn, just because it's more centrally located. And as a military person, like, it's pretty cool because it's like right outside of Fort Benning, Fort Rucker. There's a whole bunch of military bases there that kind of descend. So you can also tailgate with a whole bunch of veterans at the Iron Bowl if it's in Auburn. But, for me, this one's like a very, very hidden gem. And this is part of the things that hacks me about conference realignment and all these changes that happen. So the Rocky Mountain Showdown and the Backyard Brawl are two of my most favorite college football contests that are rivalry games. And unfortunately, now they've been relegated to the first 2 weeks of the respective seasons for those teams. So you got West Virginia and Pitt. They play at the beginning of the year now.
Yeah, week 1 this year.
Yeah, and if you watch that game, it was incredible. Now imagine moving that game to week 13, right? Huge. And I think it puts a lot of eyeballs on the team. And I think if you do it later in the season, you get more out of it. It was an exciting game. Like, make no mistake, it was a much more exciting game at the beginning of the season, but it really kind of takes the air out of it because it's like week 1 of the college football season. And that's the same thing like Colorado and Colorado State. I grew up watching Darian Hagan. I was a big time Colorado fan in high school and, the early parts of college. And after those death blow sanctions that they got in the 90s, like the rivalry kind of went away just because Colorado State was able to recruit and Colorado could not. And then when they did the conference realignment, again, you take a game that's great, showcase featured game on a night game on a, Saturday night at 9:00 on, whatever respective channel, and you move it to week 1 or week 2 of the college football season. Both of these teams, they're not as prepared. They're not in midseason form. So you're missing out on a great rivalry game that has the potential to be great because of conference realignment. But, yeah, that's my two big ones. So, of course, Rocky Mountain Showdown, Backyard Brawl, and, of course, the Iron Bowl. I think those are great. Hey, guys, it is rivalry week. Like, you've got a rivalry this weekend, championship weekend the following weekend, and then Army-Navy. And then we start talking about bowl games. And I think the bowl games are going to be interesting this year because, James on As for Football does quite a bit of analysis. And so there's 82 bowl games and there's like 78 eligible teams with 4 to 6 more that could be eligible. And so there's going to be some fallout at the end of the season based off of who doesn't get the nod. The only thing that may help some of these teams is some of the guys that have college football bowl tie-ins don't have the records to go to those bowls. And so that may help out some of those guys. But like if you're a Liberty or a UConn and you're an independent and you definitely don't have a college football bowl tie-in, your season might be over. And that would be a shame, particularly for UConn based off of the improvement that they've had over the last year. But it's going to be interesting on how this all falls out. But anyway, I'll give you guys the last word. What's your main dish for Thanksgiving? Are you guys turkey or ham guys? And then we'll wrap the show. Dan, what do you got?
Yeah, man, turkey smoked on the grill. Be outside all day.
Nice. Joe, what about you?
It's either deep fried turkey or honey baked ham, but I'll go either way. And sometimes I've been known to do both.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, we're doing.
I like to weigh myself Thanksgiving morning and then weigh myself again at night to see how much I've achieved.
Nice. Yeah, we're probably gonna knock off the turkey. So we're doing a roasting whole chicken this year, just because like turkey is cool, but like I don't want to eat like 14 pounds of turkey for the next 3 weeks, just to be completely honest. However, hey, check it out, y'all. It's week 13, rivalries. We're gonna see some people get their seasons ended. There's gonna be some feelings hurt. And thank God there's turkey to kind of offset that loss. So if you're feeling down at halftime, go ahead and grab yourself a big old slice of those leftovers and let the tryptophan take you to nap time. Because at least you can have a dream that your team won if they're losing at halftime. But anyway, I'm Rob, the Angry Colonel, out of Fayetteville. We've got 11-0 Trigger Joe coming out of the home of the Big House And we got Dano Ikebesa out of Coastal Connecticut. This is 2 O's and an NCO, Ring Knocker Radio, and we will talk to you guys next time.
Beat UMass.
Beat 'em.
Thanks for listening to the Ask for Football College Football Roundtable. Tune in next week as the AFF team brings you more hot takes and college football analysis. We'd like to thank our sponsor, BuyerBarn.com. BuyerBarn.com is the world's first platform to perform online auctions and sales for farm animals. BuyerBarn.com is dedicated to helping small farmers in America and are extending a special discount to military veterans who want to help in the revolution of the family farm. Go to BuyerBarn.com/military. That's BuyerBarn.com, BYREBARN.com to learn more and to get started, or email them at info@BuyerBarn.com. Thanks again for listening to Ask for Football College Football Roundtable, and as always, beat Navy.